people the fact that in this country, everybody had just had the democratic right to exercise their choice of the sort of government that we had in this country. My personal opinion is, of course, that they exercised that right in the right way. But whatever one's political views, at least we had the chance, and every citizen of this country had the chance to exercise their democratic right. The people in the 6 captive countries haven't had that right. And I think that it is through your work, and a valuable part of your work, to make sure that we do not take that right for granted. And I think that it is through your sterling work that you make those of us who are honoured enough to have contact with you and with your organisation appreciate just how lucky we are to have full democracy in this country. And I do hope that everyone in this room, as Councillor Davis has already said, will take it upon themselves to make sure that through your work we do not take democracy for granted, and that we fully appreciate and preserve the rights that we have, and then go on to extend, or try to extend, those rights to people in other countries, especially in the captive countries. In the year since I was last here, one of the most salutary lessons I've had, most salutary experiences, was to go to Berlin. I've been to Berlin before, in fact I lived there as a young child, but to go back as an adult and see the contrast in one city was an experience that I greatly value, an experience that I ideally wish could be shared by every citizen in the free world, because there is nothing like standing on one of the platforms beside the Berlin Wall to see the contrast between 2 types of society. On one side of the wall, there is graffiti on the wall, mainly about Jeff Boycott. And on the other side, there is a strip with automatic machine guns, there are policemen, soldiers patrolling, there are watchtowers, there is a trench, there is every conceivable barrier to prevent people escaping from their captivity. Councillor Davis drew the analogy earlier of going to a zoo, and that is just what looking into East Berlin is like, looking behind bars to people who are held in a captive environment. And what was even more salutary was to actually cross over and to go into East Berlin and to see this contrast in the form of society there that you see in that city, and to think that in that society that Berlin actually is meant to be the showcase of Eastern Europe. It only makes one wonder what the rest of it must be like. It is also salutary trying to get out of Berlin. When you go through into East Berlin and then you come back after your day's stay, to go through the process of being screened and thoroughly examined to make sure that you are who you are and that you're not one of the captive citizens trying to escape, one of the animals trying to escape from the zoo. I'm not totally pessimistic, though, about the future of communist countries. Despite what we have seen in recent years in the growth of captive nations, Afghanistan's already been mentioned, we've seen the same in Vietnam and in Africa and in the Caribbean, where communism has been expanded. Fortunately, this year we haven't seen any such expansion. And I believe that the process can be started to be put into reverse. We see, for example, in Russia, well, when I say we see, we hear of reports of young people who are beginning to adopt Western ways of life. And this has the Soviet authorities extremely worried. What they're worried about is not the fact that young people want to wear jeans or that they want to listen to Elton John. What they fear is that as they get to appreciate Western culture, so they will soon yearn for the other major example of Western life, and that is democracy. And that is the real fear of the Soviet authorities, and that their clampdown on Western music and Western dress is just part of their hiding of the real reason why they fear the growth of Western ideas in their own country. many brave people in Eastern Europe, not only in those that reach the full glare of publicity, such as Lech Walesa and the growth of the solidarity movement, but there are many individuals who we get to hear about occasionally and who many organisations seek to bring to our attention. And I'm particularly fortunate in my position in that quite often organisations write to me and to other members of Parliament about particular individuals who either are pursuing underground work or unfortunately have been captured, imprisoned and executed in some cases for doing underground work. I salute and respect those brave people, and I think it is through their example, and one only has to look at the impact that solidarity has made in the Western world, to see that their work does not go unrecognised and must form the foundation of a return to democracy and the rejection of communism. I'm not as pessimistic as Councillor Davis, although I fully support and heed his warnings about the growth of communism in this country. I actually believe that we are beginning to push the reverse the spread of communism, certainly in this country. For example, we have seen in recent months a great diminution in the influence of CND, very highly inspired communist movement. As we have seen that this government, along with the American government and other European governments, have shown themselves strong in the face of Russian aggressiveness, so we have seen the influence of CND come less. And I think one of the single most important acts that's happened over this last year, which again has brought to people's attention just what the Soviet Union is about, was to see that at the disarmament talks on nuclear weapons, that once we had shown that we were strong, it was the Russians who walked out. They were the ones who were no longer interested in talking about stopping the arms race, about reducing the number of nuclear weapons. They were the ones who left the negotiating table when we still wanted to continue. We didn't want to deploy missiles if they were going to dismantle theirs. They were the ones who walked out to make sure that they kept their missiles. And I think that single one act helped in reducing the influence of CND, because it showed up the weak facade that they had. And I also think that it has shown people the true nature of Russian aggressiveness. I don't wish to make a long speech, Mr. Chairman, because I think Councillor Davis made an extremely powerful speech, and I can't really do anything but echo his words. But all I say in conclusion is that I too wish that I do not get invited to many more of these events, and that I too am fortunate enough to be invited to the first celebration of Free Nations Week rather than Captive Nations. To that end, I wish you and everybody here good luck and continued success in all your work. And please do continue to make not only myself and those of us here aware of what's happening in Eastern Europe and the captive nations, but make everyone else in Bradford fully aware to make sure that we never forget and we don't take democracy for granted in this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff Lowler, Member of Parliament for Bradford North. And I'm glad that your experiences now give you a deeper insight in the problem of Eastern Europe. I hope that two of you are not wrong and we can roll this menace back to Moscow and beyond. Can I now ask my committee colleague, Mr. Demchuk, to read us the resolution prepared for today.
proposed resolutions for marking the end of Captive Nations Week. Whereas the Helsinki Accord on Security and Cooperation in Europe provides for non-interference in a country's internal affairs, non-violation of its boundaries by military force, and exchange of information, technological advancement, whereas it also provides for freedom of communications and travels of individuals, ability for individuals to leave a country and to take up residence elsewhere because of family reasons, and freedom to meet and discuss and exchange ideas and experiences on a professional and personal basis. Whereas the Western participating countries, Western Europe, United States and Canada, are abiding by the Helsinki Agreement, its text and its spirit, the Soviet Union, on the other hand, is persistently and blatantly violating it, as well as many other agreements to which it is a signatory. This is proved by 1. Ongoing military involvement and presence in Afghanistan, 2. Intensified reprisals against human rights campaigners and religious believers in the USSR, 3. Recently announced licensing restrictions for relief parcels sent from the Free West to the minority nationals in the USSR, and 4. Jamming of radio broadcasts from the West, particularly the BBC and Radio Liberty. 5. Violating international agreement and code of practice for international mail service as agreed by the Universal Postal Union. Now therefore, we, the participants of this Captive Nations Week meeting, resolve to ask Her Majesty's government to raise these issues with the Russians at the negotiation table in Stockholm, request that the United Nations Human Rights Commission include the above items on their agenda for discussions at their next session, and appeal to all the participating nations of the Universal Postal Union to support Resolution 294 of the United States House of Representatives and at its Congress in Hamburg later this summer. Agree to conduct an investigation on the Soviet Union's violations of the International Mail Service and to consider possible sanctions against the Soviet Union for such violations. Would all those in favour please raise their hand? And would all those against? Any abstentions? The resolutions are unanimously carried.
For the next part, the comparing will be done by a young lady, Miss Helena Stadnik. Can I have her present here, please?
Ladies and gentlemen, we begin our Captive Nations concert with the Latvian mixed voice choir LIGO under the conductorship of Mr. Alfred Talberg. Thank you. our programme, we have the Ukrainian Youth Association Dance Ensemble Kralachi, who will dance the Hutzulka, a dance which originated in the Carpathian Mountains. Choreographers are Mr. Michael Jakiu and Mrs. Olga Stepovana Bose. Ukrainian Youth Association Singing Octet Perepilka, who under the conductorship of Miss Anna Samolinska will perform 3 songs. Oj harnaya harna, Sejuja kraj Vikonichka, and Ojcze Tojski stoїть.